focuses on developing the next generation of professionals, including restoration and preservation. So we're really excited to have this panel here today, because without this, we would not have all of this. So thank you to our partners at the RPM Foundation, and I'm going to turn it over to our dear friend, Mr. Ken Gross, one of our judges and an incredible person. So Ken, it's all yours.
Thank you, Lindsay. Actually, I'm going to throw this ball for a moment to Nick Ellis, just to explain a little bit about why we're here in the Restoration Award, and then we'll chat with you all.
Thank you so much, Ken. So the RPM Foundation is dedicated to advancing the next generation of vehicle restoration and preservation professionals, and we conceived of the Restorers Award to shed light on the people who are responsible for the hands-on work that goes into the vehicles that you see here in the Concours today. Without that generation, we're not going to see much of a future of events like this. There's been a big push from the 1970s and 80s for everybody to go towards a four-year college degree, and while that's really terrific for a lot of people, it's not for everybody. So what we're trying to do is elevate the profile of the skilled trades with awards like the Restorers Award to really give credit to the people and the talent that are behind the vehicles that you see here today. That's the purpose of the award.
Thank you, Nick. So before we start, let me introduce our fellow panelists here. Jason Manns from Manns Restoration is a guy, I don't know when he's ever home, because I see him at every show with a car, usually an award-winning car. And one of the things that his restoration shop can do that a lot of people can't, they seem to be able to work on anything, and that's a great talent to do. So Jason, thank you for coming. And next to him is Bill Warner, who is the esteemed founder of the Amelia Island Concours, better known now as the Amelia. And Bill, while not a restorer, Bill has probably dealt with more restorers and more car owners than almost anyone I can think of. We used to joke that he has the best Rolodex in the business, and for those of you who remember what a Rolodex is, you know Bill knows everybody. Wayne Carini, who is a restorer and a mechanic, and who was telling people the other day that he went to Hershey when he was 8 years old chasing parts. Today that would probably be cruelty to children, but it does show you how Wayne's experience goes back a long way. So we're going to talk a little bit about restorers and the restoration profession, and I guess I would an automotive technician and a restorer, because they're both mechanics, if you will, but what's the difference that makes someone able to do old cars and work back in the past?
Well, I think a technician is somebody that solves a problem on a car, whether it be with old tools or a computer that we see today solves a problem by plugging the car in. A restorer has a vision of what something can be from either a pile of parts or a car that needs to come in and be totally refurbished, and I think it's that vision that separates the two. And of course, a lot of restorations that my dad used to get into our shop today, we'd be taken out in the back and whipped because they shouldn't be restored because they're so original and so beautiful as they are. But if the car came in, before and it had a little bit of patina to it, you automatically restored it. And things have changed drastically in that behalf.
I guess I would ask Jason perhaps to add to that in terms of the people that you're hiring in your shop. What are you looking for? What abilities do they need to have to be successful?
Well, the one thing you can't teach somebody is the desire. That has to be something that you're just born within, and you have that connection to the car. And some of the skill sets you can learn if you have the desire to do it.
Today there's a lot of discussion about preservation versus restoration. When Fred Simeone passed away a couple of months ago, I was asked to write a tribute to Fred for Sports Car Market. And so I reread his book, The Stewardship of Automobiles. And when I finished it, and I've been a Pebble Beach judge for 31 years, I thought, why in the hell are we restoring these cars? I mean, Fred is all about preserving and taking care of and not erasing the history. So, Bill, you've shown restored cars, unrestored cars. You know, from your perspective at Amelia, what was more popular, and what do you see the differences between restored cars and preserved cars as we go forward?
Well, I think the general audience wanted to see pristine cars. The cognoscenti wanted to see cars as they were. So there was an important factor in having cars that were as they were. They weren't pristine, but they represented what was going on at the time. Many times in a restoration, the importance of the car can be lost in the restoration. And I got to correct you one thing. I did restore some cars. I started with a Brabham BT8, and that's what I bought out of a South Carolina junkyard for $2,900. And the first thing I did was take the panel back. Now, here's the most important part for me about restoring a car. Don't get started right away. Study it. Get all the books you can, get all the contact you can, find out about the car, because the car will tell you about it. And on this particular car, it was rumored to be a Denny Holmes car, a tourist trophy with it. So I contacted Denny Holmes through Brian Redmond, got photos from the car, got what damage was on the car, wet sanded the doors, got names Harold Day and Jeff Breckel off of it, found out they were still alive in England, called them, they bought the car from Sid Taylor, and it was a Denny Holmes car. That's before I really started. So my advice to people who get started, if you get a car, don't jump into it. I know you want to see it done quickly. That's not necessary.
One of the points that Nick put on here in terms of talking about restorers is the perception of the restoration business. How are restorers perceived? Wayne, maybe you'd start.
Well, of course, everybody wants something done day after tomorrow. You know, I've had several cars come into the shop, and one is an Arnold Bristol coupe. And then the gentleman got an estimate for doing the repairs, and he said, how long is this going to take? I said, well, it'll be about a year and a half. He says, well, I can get this done in 4 months at another shop. I said, be my guest. 4 years later, he called me, and he had been to 4 different shops with the same idea, and he got so frustrated that I ended up buying the car from him. And unfortunately, I haven't finished the restoration today. It's been like 12 years, actually. But I bought it and I said, I'll have this thing done in 8 months. This is going to be great. But it's not done yet. So in our shop, everybody else comes to the front first, all of our customers. And the guy that owns the place, he gets in the back. But I've learned a lesson because I've got a lot of cars that need to be restored. And time is going on in my life, so now I have one car in the shop at all times being restored. So at least I'll hopefully get them done.
Well, following up on that a little bit, the perception of restorers in today's world. What do people think of restorers versus, let's say, the person who repairs your car after an accident? I mean, do restorers have a certain perception?
Well, I mean, we all enjoy what we do, and if you don't enjoy it, you shouldn't be in the business. You know, that's really the key. Is like you're saying, is that you got to really enjoy what you're doing, and especially the technicians. So the technicians have to enjoy it because they see the same car day after day after day, and it can get pretty dang boring looking at the same car all the time. So what we do is we make sure that we've got 2 or 3 jobs per technician going at the same time. It gets a little, you know, lackadaisical about a certain car, he moves on. But the perception is, I think, is that it all depends on where your mindset is as to, first off, how much money that you want to put into a vehicle. And, you know, we get guys that want to restore a car and they say, well, I can do that probably for 20 grand, right? I said, well, we can do the interior for 20 grand or the chrome, but not certainly that. But if you come in with the perception that it's gonna cost you some money, and you want it perfect, we're happy to work with clients. But and then of course, when it wins the first award, or you drive it and you take it for a ride, and you show the person how good the car goes and how it looks, you're the hero. Everything else is forgotten really quickly. All those moments of calling in desperation, when's my car going to be done? It all disappears real quick.
Bill was saying that when people come to an event like Amelia Island, they want to see shiny cars, but and we're also finding that unrestored cars, preserved cars where you can really see their history, are becoming more popular at events. Was that happening at Amelia, and why?
Yeah, I guess. The problems we had at Amelia were documenting cars that were being brought to us. One of the problems are there are some unscrupulous characters out there who will fabricate a car. And if they get
Not Jason, by the way.
What's that?
Not Jason.
No, not Jason. But the vetting out process for us was very, very intense. We'd make trips to Philadelphia to visit Fred. We'd call factories, we'd get factory documentation on cars. And it didn't miss 1 year. We'd always had one or two cars that were misrepresented. And what we were fearful of is the car was shown at Amelia, and if it won an award, and later we found out it had been a recreated car, then we got egg on our face. The guy does a beautiful restoration, he comes to the shop, or comes to the show, and he doesn't win, and he doesn't know the full story behind his car, then he's upset. So it was a fine line to walk, and you couldn't, in a lot of cases, discuss what it is that didn't make the car acceptable for fear of a lawsuit. So there were certain restorers that we always knew were but were legit in their restorations. The guys I dealt with a lot were Paul Russell, Steve Levinsky. If they did a car, I was pretty comfortable with it. And even Wayne Carini, and Jason. No problem there. But we've had cars come out of the woodwork that we've had to document. We had to go very, very, very deep for a very long time. And the sad part is many of the people involved in some of these cars, particularly pre-war cars, especially pre-war cars, are dead. So you have to depend on records that are out there. That was the toughest part for me.
Jason, maybe you could talk a bit for us. Obviously, a guy comes to work, or a gal comes to work, and there's a car sitting there, and there's a fender that needs to be straightened, or an interior that needs to be redone. But there's a certain amount of studying involved to know what to do to it, particularly when you're dealing with different makes and models. So how does that balance out in your shop in terms of a fellow who's come to work? Are they working on the car? Are they studying? Or how does that all work?
Well, really, you have to have a plan. You have to have a very forward plan. And so there needs to be a clear understanding of the purpose. There are a lot of reasons why a person would have a car restored. And so the end result, are they going to use it as a driver? Is it going to sit in their collection? Is it going to be on a Concours field? There are a lot of reasons and purpose. So the first thing that you really need is a good, clear plan. And that outlines to the extent of what you're going to do. If you're going to take a fender and just repair a dent in it, or you're going to remove it, strip the whole thing down, and start from over. So that really dictates. So having a very good, clear plan, like you said, you have to study the car, know the car. And it's the same way with your clients and the job you're doing, having the purpose.
So I think it's Clausewitz in military studies and Mike Tyson in boxing, who said that when the first shot is fired or the first punch happens, the plan goes out the window. So how about that?
The plan does go out the window.
I'm not looking to find fault with the plan, but how do you cope and adjust? I mean, you've got multiple cars going through your shop. You have timetables. You've got impatient clients. There's got to be some skill with this. What do you do?
And how many times, I know you've heard it too, Wayne, when people say, well, I'm not going to show the car. We just want it nice. And then it's on a Concours field. And you're like, what? Is that a way to get it done for less? I don't know. But people just get wrapped up in it. It could be a small repair that just grows and grows. You have to adapt. And that's the big thing. You have to be adaptable.
Wayne could probably add to that in terms of some of the problems you never thought you'd face, but did, or things you had to solve.
There's always problems, that's for sure. But what we do is, and I think the secret sauce that we use is communication with our clients, and a constant communication with photographs and videos, and a phone call at least twice a week to bring them up to speed as to what's going on, and keeping them totally in the clear and not in the dark, and that really helps out a lot. And you know, I think that they become part of the process, and that's what we want. We want our customers to become part of the process, not the guy that just writes the check, sends it in the mail, and then says, okay, put it in my garage. When you're done, we want to make sure that that person is totally involved, and I think that makes the process so much better.
Nick has a few notes here which I've been referring to. One of them says, restorers as rock stars. Well, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I can kind of guess. Are restorers getting the accolades they deserve? It isn't just necessarily winning an award, but what can we do in the car hobby, perhaps to, and this award is one way, to recognize it. Bill?
We recognized that a couple of years ago, and we said, you know, we have fellows on the field who have cars restored. Some of these guys don't even know how to start them and drive them. I mean, it's part of like taking a horse to the Kentucky Derby. So we came up with an award, Craftsman Tools funded an award for the best pre-war and best post-war restorations, and the restorer got the larger award, and the owner got a minimal award. So we wanted to push that out there, that the restorers should be recognized, where they are rock stars. They're very talented. They're dealing with challenges environmentally on equipment, product they could use now that you couldn't use, say, 20 or 30 years ago, right? How'd you handle something that was done in lacquer, and now it comes today, and you can't shoot lacquer, can you?
Yeah. You know, and there's a lot of, you would just say compliance, environmental compliance. You know, it's changed the industry, it's changed our products, it's changed our safety protocols, and the things that I was exposed to as a young man just learning, we'd probably be shut down for we just didn't know. So, yeah, there's been a large evolution.
Just to add to the the concept of restorers as rock stars, the reason we're drawing that parallel is there's such a challenge in getting young people to engage in this industry and to take this on. I want to point something out when we're talking here about the skill set. What you've heard today so far, it hasn't been a lot about the actual hands-on. Here's the level of skill that it takes to to properly smooth a fender, that it's ready for paint, to shape fenders, to work on the engines. There's an immense amount of technology that spans years and marks that you have to know in order to do this business. What you've been hearing mostly is the philosophy behind it, thinking in terms of restoration versus preservation, thinking in terms of planning out the restoration. This is a much more cerebral position than I think a lot of people are aware of. So when we say restorers as rock stars, the parallel that I make is that somebody who goes to music school, learns how to play the guitar, they will be perfectly happy coming out of school and working several different part-time jobs and scraping by in order to get to the weekend where they can get up on stage and play the guitar. Why can't we see restorers in the same light, that they are these talented people who are really worthy of recognition as a way of drawing more young people into the career and giving them the recognition that they deserve? So that's the thought behind the restorers as rock stars.
I think it depends on shows like this. It's come up with awards for restorers, specifically for it. We did it for two reasons. One, we wanted to recognize great restorers and restorations. And the second thing, in doing that, the restorer is a great source for great cars that haven't been seen before. So selfishly, I was getting newer cars that hadn't been seen somewhere else, because it's important for a show to get a first showing. So if a restorer thought he could come to Amelia Island and get recognized for his work, and we get a car that had been seen somewhere else, selfishly I win and you win, right? Marketing.
Yeah, and that was the premise behind the award, was the best fresh restoration where it never been shown anywhere else. First time showing, and that was the premise. And I was the representative, I'm the brand ambassador for Craftsman Tools, so I was lucky enough to be able to give the award every year. I chose it a few years, and then I asked not to be part of the committee. No, well, it just so happens that we did bring a car, and my fellow judges. I don't think you were with us that day, but our fellow judges, I said I can't judge this particular car because I restored it, and at the end they go, well, it was the best restoration. I said, I don't care. I can't be perceived that I'm giving myself the trophy. So I talked him into giving it to somebody else, but you know, it's just one of those things. But I think what we get out of it, and I tell my employees, I say, your satisfaction is when the job is done and we all sort of stand back 50 feet and we look at the car, we take it out for test drives, and it's that satisfaction. Now it's the owner's turn to really go out and show the car and take all the accolades because they were part of the process too, and that's what happens. You know, my guys don't go and show cars anymore. They've got their own lives. You know, I've got guys with me. Steve's been with me for 44 years. Amazing. He came to me sweeping the floor, and now he's my Ferrari expert. It's amazing, just over time. So I think that that's the satisfaction we get out of it as restorers, and you have to have that in you, because if you don't, and you're just looking for that trophy yourself, it's maybe not the right business.
So there's an issue today where people say a lot of folk, you can't get ahead in life unless you go to college. And we know that that is really not true. And there are skilled trades where you can make a very decent living and have a lot of satisfaction working with your hands, working with your mind. So how do we, I say we, this whole old car business, where do we find these young people? How do we encourage these young people? What are you doing to recruit if it's not giving away a big secret?
Well, what we do at the RPM Foundation, the most important relationship for us is the instructors at the high school automotive programs and the post-secondary automotive programs. They're out there in front of, you know, dozens or sometimes hundreds of kids per year, and they're the ones who have the closest relationship with those kids. So they can look out there and they can say, this is somebody who's meant for, you know, working 9 to 5 in a dealership. This is somebody who's meant for restoring vehicles. We're looking for that very rare blend of artistic and technical talent, and there's no better way, in my opinion, to do that than to work directly with the instructors that are teaching those kids. And it's a very small ratio. What I've found is in a class of maybe 30 students, you maybe have one that's truly meant for this. But Jason, I'd be curious to know how you recruit for your shop.
Well, often we really don't recruit because it's those students find us. You know, there are not very many shops that do like what Wayne or I do, so if you're the young person looking for this to be your career, maybe there's only a dozen or so shops across the country that might even be on your radar. And so whenever you're an established business that do cars at this level, you kind of become the target destination for these young craftspeople.
And one other thing that we do is we have a technical school really close to us, and so he's always, the teacher's always looking for talent that he knows who is going to be the best person to fit that position. And then you know, we've had several of those young people actually work for us for a period of time and then go off on their own and start their own shops. So, you know, they have that initiative to really start doing something. And then, of course, I'm on the board of McPherson College in McPherson, Kansas. McPherson offers a 4-year program, Bachelor of Arts degree, as well as education in automotive restoration. So they educate you so that you can go out, leave school, and you could actually, if you have the real initiative, you could open your own business. So they teach you a lot about everything. Right now we have a young man that came, Mason Ball, came to work for us as an intern last summer, and Mason graduates this coming spring, and he's moving to Connecticut from Texas, and he's getting married and moving his wife, and he's going to work for us. And he says, I think I found the place that I really love and I really want to work for you guys. So it's really cool to finally, you know, it's a fit. Some people just don't fit. And also I think, you know, TV shows like mine and like Dave Kindig's and all these other shows give the young people the initiative. They see it on TV and they say, wow, I could be, you know, that's really cool. That's a cool business to be in. And I think that really helps too. So I know Mason Ball, that's coming to work for us, he was sitting with his parents one night and they were talking about colleges, and they saw my show about McPherson College, and he said, I think that's where I want to go, and he's successful. He's graduating this year and coming to work for us.
I'm glad you brought up McPherson College because it's been important in our area, in North Florida, with the Brumos Collection, because they have gentlemen there that not only taught, ladies and gentlemen, not only taught how to do restoration, but they have collection management. They teach a whole broad scale that ties into the collector car genre. And we've got some young guys down there now, and they're really into it. And Dan Davis has been a big supporter for McPherson College. I believe Clemson University also has a NASCAR program, so you can learn racing. But I think getting the word out. And at Amelia, when we had our seminars, we would always invite 500 students from the local community. The only challenge we had many times was the time frame in which they could come, because there were certain rules and regulations that the school board put in about how they were transported, how they got back, and what time they could be away from class. So we had to reschedule these programs to allow the students to be a part of it.
Nick, is there something we didn't cover before we ask our audience if they want to ask a question?
Well, I just want to point out, we're talking about absolutely fabulous programs. RPM Foundation has been a big supporter of McPherson College. Over the years, we've given them over $800,000 in scholarship. Pennsylvania College of Technology is another terrific program. Central Carolina Community College, right here in this area. These programs are absolutely fantastic, and they're very integral, but if you add up the students that are coming out of those programs, it's 100 students a year about. We did industry research that shows that there's about 3,000 restoration shops across the country. 62% of them report that they need at least one new person, so that's an 1,800 person need. So the RPM Foundation is actually building an apprenticeship program to turn those shops into the classrooms where the students can learn as they're earning a living and accumulate the skills that they need to have a career in this. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned the apprenticeship program.
Could we see if any of our audience has a question for anyone up here? Yes, sir.
Where did it start for each of you guys? Like, where did you start to kind of get the initiative to want to work on cars and bring back the original parts of cars?
I had no choice. I was born into the industry. My dad was the founder of the Model A Restorers Club in 1952, and he restored cars, and that's how he made his living. And when I could hold a piece of sandpaper and go like this, I was hired. And I went to college to become an architect and graduated with an art education degree, and went back to work for my father for the summer until I found a job, and here we are, still today. So once it's in your blood and it gets into your psyche, you'll know that that's the right business for you. And just go out and try it. You know, a lot of guys say, how do you get into collecting cars? I said, just buy something. Buy a Pinto station wagon and take to a car show. And they go, why a Pinto station wagon? Everybody's going to talk to you if you have a Pinto station wagon. They're not going to talk to you if there's 100, and I don't want to make this sound wrong, but if there's 100 Camaros lined up and you've got a Camaro, it's just another Camaro. But when you got a Pinto wagon, everybody wants to talk to you.
Especially one that's not inflamed.
That's right. But I mean, it's the same thing. Just get into it, you know. I see you got a McLaren hat on, so you're already into it, we can tell. So I wish you the best.
Well, I'm kind of out of place here because I started as a collector. I wasn't a restorer. My degree was in electrical engineering, so but I couldn't afford guys like this. My first car was a race car, and I found out race cars were easy to restore. They fell apart easy, they were put together easy, and they were easy to document. So I started out with a Brabham BT8, a King Cobra, an Elbow, and two Triumphs, two Group 44 Triumphs. So the documentation was there. It was good to do. And I did a lot of the work myself, and I had a guy working for me who had worked in the British trade industry. Started out in the RAF, worked for Lola, worked for Colin Chapman. He came to work for me, and he was a detail guy.
Yeah, for me, it's a similar story to Wayne. You know, I was born with chrome in my DNA. My great-grandfather started our shop 83 years ago. So 4 generations later, I didn't have much of a choice either. Sweeping the shop floor as a young boy and just grew into it.
Anyone else out there?
So Judy mentioned American Wheels Museum, which RPM Foundation is underneath the umbrella of a larger organization called America's Automotive Trust. Within that umbrella is American Wheels, RPM Foundation, LeMay America's Car Museum in Tacoma, Washington. And the question is, what can these organizations be doing to further advance education? And we actually have educational programs at each museum. There's a great engine building program at the LeMay America's Car Museum. American Wheels has some great exhibits there at the museum that familiarize young people and allow them to get their hands on the vehicles. But we're also developing a task force of educators to learn, or to develop learning programs for young people, because we've got to start getting a wrench in their hands before high school. By the time you get to high school, your career path is starting to get decided. And if you don't know one end of the wrench from the other, it's not really going to be a possibility for you. So we're trying to come up with programs that we can be advancing out to museums across the country to get young people hands-on experience for the first time in their lives.
You know, one of the biggest problems that I think erupted over the years was the loss of shop programs in high school. So shop programs went away, and skill sets went away, and now you ask the average homeowner to fix their own plumbing and they just think you're nuts. You know, woodworking, any of those skills. And it all started, unfortunately, I hope nobody's a lawyer here, but too many lawyers suing school systems when Johnny got nicked in shop class. You know, and next thing you know, they said, oh, we can't have shop class anymore because we'll get sued if somebody cuts their finger off or something. So I think that's the biggest thing, and if we could get shop classes back into the school systems, I think it would really make a huge difference in all young people getting involved in becoming a plumber, electrician, a restoration expert.
Nick, you're going to be awarding your Restorers Award today. Could you tell everyone about that, when it'll be, and how that looks?
The award will be in with the other awards during the ceremony today. So I think our awards is going to be about 3:30 today on the Great Lawn here. And I want to thank everybody for coming out and for the support. And I especially want to thank the Concours for the support of the RPM Foundation and giving us a stage like this. So thank you to everybody.
How to restore today?
Hi.
Hey.
The lady, let me stop and model airplane, and she's like,
Welcome. Yes, that's bad.
I need to figure out how to stop this.